Hey everybody, Jacob the Animation Critic here. If you recall my We're Back a Dinosaur story review, then you probably remember me opening up the episode with a brief sketch depicting the meeting between Steven Spielberg and movie executive that led to said movie's greenlighting. While the scene was entirely fictional, it does show just how powerful a real-life executive can be. The corporate executive archetype has been used in several films and TV shows, and looking behind the scenes, one can see why. Executives have a huge control over how movies and TV shows are made, and that's because nothing can go public without their approval. Sometimes they're 100% satisfied, other times they reject the final product altogether. But for the most part, they insist that changes are made. These changes come in a wide variety. They can affect the film itself or how it's advertised. They can be relatively small changes, or they can make the final product completely different from what was intended. Sometimes it's to make the product more kid-friendly, or sometimes more appealing to adults. The changes that are made and the reasons for doing so come in a wide variety, but for the most part, it usually comes down to one thing.
We've got to have money.
So yeah, executives can ask that whatever changes they want to be made to the final product in an attempt to make more money. And sometimes the results can actually be pretty positive. A notable example being in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where executives permitted Bugs Bunny to appear on the condition that he had the exact same amount of screen time as rival cartoon star Mickey Mouse. The result? Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse sharing the screen for the first and only time ever in one of animation's most memorable and surreal moments. Unfortunately, for every good decision made by an executive, there is at least one bad decision. Today we'll be discussing the downsides of executive meddling in the animation industry. The examples discussed today will range from mildly annoying to really stupid to just flat out insulting to the original creator's intentions. So prepare yourselves for major booing people, for this is the top 12 biggest executive mistakes in regards to the animation industry.
Well, Mr. the Frog, let me see.
I'm Dennis Rich Man, Mr. Texas T. People call me rich cause I got more money. I got more cheddar than some supersized nachos. Got cash flow like Robert has De Niro. I use more greens than Vincent Van Gogh. I make the baker bake my bread out of dough. No, don't eat it though, it'll make you ill. There ain't no flour in a $100 bill.
He's Tex Rich Man.
Oh yeah!
Everybody listen.
Here we go now.
Just how great it is to be him.
Oh, it's great to be me, yeah!
He's the greatest.
Hey, sing it again!
He's the greatest.
Oh, it never gets old.
Puppets are a waste of time, oh, can't you see?
Little Muppets, time to give up your dream.
Number 12. The title change of what is now The Great Mouse Detective. Now I know what you're thinking. What, a title change? That doesn't sound so bad. Well, to be honest, people, I don't think so either. But the thing is, while I may not think of it as a big deal, and you may not think of it as a big deal, the creators of the film thought this was a pretty big deal. Originally titled Basil of Baker Street, Disney executives, including Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was still working with the Mouse House at the time, was unsatisfied with the title and insisted it to be changed to The Great Mouse Detective. This caused a huge uproar among the animators, with two of the film's directors claiming to have hated the change. In response, animator Ed Gombert wrote a satirical inter-office memo allegedly written by studio executive Peter Schneider. The memo claimed that all of Disney's films would be given new names, like Snow White being renamed Seven Little Men Help a Girl, Cinderella being renamed The Girl with the See-Through Shoes, and 101 Dalmatians being renamed Puppies Taken Away. As you probably guessed, animators loved the joke, executives did not. Wait a minute. Why does all of this sound so familiar? Right. Overall, there's nothing too bad here, but enough to upset the people who put their heart and soul into their work. I mean, oh well, they could have done something worse. I mean, they could have done something really stupid like replacing Vincent Price as the voice of Ratigan with, like, Gilbert Gottfried. Oh my god, I just realized how horrible that would be.
There's no escaping me, Bucktooth themed superhero! Just a quarter? No!
Money is such a beautiful word.
I know.
It soars in my mind like a beautiful bird.
I know.
Bear than that. It makes me feel like an aristocrat. That's where it's at. Money is such a beautiful word.
Quite so. Quite so.
Number 11.
So.
The marketing campaign of the Lorax. In order to make the most money possible, executives will sometimes insist on promotional tie-ins with other companies in order to promote their product, even if it contradicts the message of said film. Now, let me make it clear that I enjoy the Lorax. The animation fits the style of the original Dr. Seuss book, the supporting cast is pretty memorable, and what they kept the same from the original book really works well. Of course, the film does have its faults, one of them being how the film was marketed. Yeah, the marketing campaign of this film has come under a lot of fire from people who claim the several corporation tie-ins counter the anti-corporate message of the original book. However, while I personally don't like it too much, I don't think it's as bad as everybody says it is. And the reason for that is I don't think the Lorax is quote-unquote anti-corporate. The reason for this is the Onceler. Even though he technically is the book's antagonist, I really don't consider him a villain, as he eventually does learn from his mistakes, and when given the opportunity, he does try to set things right again, sort of. The movie actually makes him less of an antagonist, for he does in fact agree to stop cutting down truffula trees at the wishes of the Lorax before his demonic family convinces him otherwise. If the book and the movie were really anti-corporate, the Onceler would be depicted more like... For the sake of this discussion, let's forget about him. So, what exactly about the marketing campaign am I against? Well, the real message of the book is a pro-environmental ASOP, and while there are eco-friendly tie-ins with such groups as Energy Star and the U.S. Forest Service, at the other end of the spectrum, there's this.
Who delivers outstanding fuel efficiency without compromising the joy of driving? Mazda with Skyactiv technology. And who received the only certified truffula tree seal of approval? Mazda with Skyactiv technology. And who...
I don't know. You've only said it like a billion times.
Only Mazda could reimagine driving with revolutionary Skyactiv technology. We build Mazdas. What do you drive?
Aren't we forgetting something?
Oh, and do see Dr. Seuss's The Lorax in theaters this March.
I checked. It's not a hybrid, it's not electric, it's not any of those eco-friendly cars. It's just basically another gas-guzzling SUV. Yeah. Bottom line, when you're trying to create tie-ins between your movie and products, make sure you remember what movie you're promoting.
Money is such a wonderful thing.
Ah, yes. Ah, yes.
I find that I use it for everything.
No less. No less.
Money is power. If it were food, it's a dish I'd devour every hour. Money is such a beautiful word.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
Number
yes.
10. The removal of advertising for the Rescuers Down Under. Here we have the exact opposite of the number 11 spot. While the Lorax may have gotten a little too much advertising, the Rescuers Down Under did not get enough. For those of you who don't know, The Rescuers Down Under was a sequel to the 1977 classic The Rescuers, released in 1990 at the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. The film had a different style from most of the films of that period, choosing an action-adventure setting rather than the musical style most of the other films took. Does that make it bad? Absolutely not. In fact, many people to this day consider the film to be better than its predecessor. Unfortunately, the film bombed at the box office, though that might be Jeffrey Katzenberg's fault. Allow me to explain. The Rescuers Down Under opened with a weekend gross of approximately $3.5 million. Katzenberg was obviously disappointed with this amount, so he decided that all TV advertising was to be pulled. That's right, people. This movie bombed because apparently some idiot decided that he wasn't happy with the movie's weekend totals. I mean, it's not a lot, but if he just let the advertising do its job, maybe the film would have been profitable in the long run. A good example of this happening was with Titanic. the movie opened with a modest $22 million opening against a $200 million budget, yet it managed to become one of the highest grossing films of all time because they kept advertising it and convincing people to go see it. Something similar could have happened with The Rescuers Down Under. Could the movie still have bombed? Maybe, but at least there would be more people who were aware of its existence. Not much else to say, but for this decision, and several others, I think we can all agree that Jeffrey Katzenberg deserves to go down under.
Money's my passion, always in fashion. Stashing cash, cream in the cream, that is my...
Money's a glorious thing. When I see lots of it, I want to stand up and sing.
Money's my favorite, that's why I crave it. Being a rich, wicked old witch.
Number 9. The Disneyfication of Quest for Camelot. During the 1990s, Disney was at the height of its success, and as a result, other studios attempted to repeat the Disney formula in an attempt to make a quick buck. Some would do okay, others would fail miserably, but nobody managed to reach the levels that Disney was at. In the case of Quest for Camelot, the Disney formula was basically forced upon by Warner Brothers executives. According to former animators of the film, including brony goddess Lauren Faust, Quest for Camelot was basically made up of the executive meddling. The film is actually based off of a fantasy novel called The King's Damsel, and was originally intended to stay true to the original book as a PG-13 film much darker than what was seen at the time. Unfortunately, Warner Bros. Decided that this wasn't as profitable and insisted the film be toned down for a family audience. As a result, we have about as cheap as a Disney knockoff can get. This movie uses so many Disney cliches that you could basically make a drinking game out of it. In fact, I did make a drinking game out of it. A game that I never wish to play again. There is one good thing to come out of this, however. After the movie bombed at the box office, most likely due to competition and people seeing it as a Disney knockoff it was, the director of Warner Animation's next film decided to throw out all the Disney cliches and focus on creating a film entirely different from what Disney was producing at the time. The director's name? Brad Bird. His film? The Iron Giant. I think we all know the rest of this story. Okay, so the movie bombed too, but at least the critical reception was so much better. Just goes to show that the popular thing at the time does not always guarantee good results, especially when there isn't much effort put into it.
Money for me is all that there is.
It is. It is.
I spend it so well, I'm the best in the biz.
A whiz. A whiz.
Money and I, we are as happy as apple and pie. Haven't you heard? Money is such
Number 8.
beautiful word.
The re-editing of The Land Before Time and The Black Cauldron. I put these two together because when you really think about it, the exact same thing happened to each of these movies, even if the outcome wasn't exactly the same. Let's start with The Land Before Time. According to executive producer Steven Spielberg, about 11 whole minutes were cut from the final film due to complaints from several parents that scenes in the movie were too scary for children. Director Don Bluth fought hard to keep these scenes in, but in the end he reluctantly gave in. I guess I wouldn't mind too much, except the final product barely lasts over an hour, around 69 minutes to be exact. On the bright side, they did leave in the scene depicting the death of Littlefoot's mother, which was also going to be cut out, but left in to explain why Littlefoot was traveling on his own. After The Black Cauldron, it had even more scenes removed from the final cut. Around 12 whole minutes were cut from the film due to the film's length and fear that the film's scary imagery would turn away young audiences. Who made this decision? That's right, Jeffrey Katzenberg. Despite protests from the film's producers, Katzenberg decided to re-edit the film himself until he was stopped by Michael Eisner. And even then, he insisted the film be revised heavily. What would I have done differently? Well, around the time of this movie's production, Disney created the Touchstone Pictures label in an attempt to create more mature movies for the Disney studio. So I would have left the movie the way it was and released it under the Touchstone label. That way, older audiences would be more willing to see it without being turned off by the Disney label. Worked with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, so why not The Black Cauldron? Not much else to say, but Executives need to stay out of the editing room.
Money, they say, is as evil as Satan and probably worse.
'Tis.
A dreadful and wonderful curse.
'Tis.
A pleasure to have in my purse.
It is.
Money is the
most beautiful word.
Number 7. The Robin Williams / Disney conflict. Have you ever wondered why the genie in Aladdin sounds like Homer Simpson instead of Robin Williams in the sequel and the TV series? Well, here's the story why. When Robin Williams was signed on to voice the genie, he agreed to receive lower paychecks on the condition that his name wasn't used and that his character wouldn't take up more than 25% of the advertising. Of course, the executives turned their backs on both these conditions, and as you can probably imagine, Williams was not happy. After a bitter falling out, Robin refused to do voice work for the sequel and the TV series, being replaced by Homer Simpson voice actor Dan Castellaneta. Personally, I don't blame the guy. He offered to do his role for a low salary, and this is how you repay him? Seriously, who made these decisions? Oh god, Jeffrey Katzenberg again. I am so sick of you appearing on my list. Will you just stop? Jeez. Luckily for me, Katzenberg was fired sometime later, and Disney made a public apology to Williams. He accepted the apology and agreed to do the genie for the next sequel, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. So, all that took to win Robin Williams back was an apology and have Katzenberg fired. Makes sense to me. I would have dealt the same way. But still, the conflict between Robin Williams and Disney is a perfect example of a lesson that I learned myself from Rugrats.
If a promise you don't keep, it will haunt you in your sleep. And as you lie beneath your quilt, you will have a conscience full of guilt.
God, I love that show.